India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, but government policies and spending have failed to kickstart rural demand post the pandemic. With India's general election campaigning in full swing, can rural demand get a much needed boost? Take a look at this next report to find out, and we'll discuss this further after that.
As the political fervor heightens with the approaching general elections in 2024, economists are scrutinizing whether the electoral buzz will translate into a much-needed boost for rural consumption. Despite the anticipation surrounding the polls, historic data suggests that the election cycle alone might not suffice to invigorate rural demand. Reports indicate that the resurgence in demand for passenger cars and two-wheelers stems more from broader economic growth than electoral activities. Reports suggest only post-poll policies could spur rural consumption. Easing inflationary pressures are expected to bolster real wages, further stimulating purchasing power. Experts also suggest rationalizing of indirect taxes could help India's rural economy. Enhancing support for rural employment schemes could also provide a safety net for residents. But the most significant factor at play is a favorable monsoon season that could bolster demand. With a normal monsoon forecast, the government may need minimum intervention. While India is expected to remain the fastest growing major economy in the world, rural consumption remains tepid. While the general elections may inject some optimism, sustained efforts beyond the electoral cycle are imperative to drive rural consumption. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And for more on this, we are being joined by Vikas Singh, who's an economist and author, joining us live from Hyderabad. Welcome to World Business Watch, sir. I wanted to understand from you, will 2024 polls spur rural demand in India? What are your thoughts?
Morning, Shivan, and good morning to all your viewers. Thank you so much for having me here. The 2024 polls may provide a temporary fillip to rural demand, but for sustained growth and development, long-term factors such as job creation, agricultural development, investment in infrastructure, and radical and sustainable agricultural reforms are needed. While election campaigns often inject money into rural communities through various means such as hiring of local workers, for hiring of local media, but the real growth can come in if there is sustainable reforms and the sustainable implementation of those reforms.
Mr. Singh, now when do you realistically see India's rural demand picking up? If you were to put it on a timeline, how do you see this one playing out?
Shivan, as mentioned earlier, I think the key to the whole growth, India is growing. However, the rural development and growth is largely dependent on the agricultural sector. Unless India is able to bring in those radical and sustainable reforms, the growth can be unsustainable, the growth can be tepid, and the growth cannot remain for a longer duration. Just to give you an example, the election may bring in short-term fillip to the growth because people would be spending money for the election campaign. But if the new government that comes to power is not able to sustain by bringing in those reforms, by making sure that the growth drivers are in place, by ensuring that the growth in the urban areas and in the larger economy trickles down to people who really matter, those 60% of rural consumers, rural folks who live in villages. Unless the money goes there, the growth cannot be sustained.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, sir. That was Mr. Vikas Singh, economist and author, joining us live from Hyderabad.